Okay, so I was thinking that it'd be fun to show my process for creating any sort of file. Now, I'm not sure how this is going to show up because I've never done this before, but I think you should be able to see my Illustrator screen right now. And I'm using Adobe Illustrator, but you could use pretty much any drawing app. And what I do is I take a photo of whatever paper template that I've made, and in this case, is the inside of a pocket. This is my tween pocket. It goes in my tween dresses and like hoodie dresses and things like that. I have a little bit bigger one that's angled a little more downward for my adult pocket. I have some other stuff prepared that we can show. I've got my size 3/4 dress and a couple other things. And basically, I start off with my photo of it on my cutting mat. My cutting mat is in terrible shape. And then I turn on my grid, which is set to be 1/2-inch squares. And I turn on my ruler so that I can see what's what. And then I expand my image, expand it until the squares on the cutting mat line up pretty close to exactly with the squares on my Illustrator. It's a little warped because I'm standing over it, but you can be as precise as you want. And I put it on my working area and just make sure that it lines up pretty closely. It's a little big. And so it'll work with any app that you have that has the ability to have a grid or a guide underneath or overlaid over your image. That's pretty close. Okay, so now I've got it lined up on my grids, or at least fairly close to lined up on my grids. You can also kind of unwarp and use the different warping, like what do they call it? Transform tools. So you can stretch and skew and rotate and stuff like that. But that's pretty close. So then I'm going to take and lock that layer. And that layer's locked, so I can't draw on this photo itself. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to enlarge my document, edit my artboard to be the size that I need it to be for this image. So now my artboard is the same size as my little template piece here. Hopefully you can see that. And so now we've got just this image. And then I'm going to use my path tool, which is these ones over on, God, I don't know if I can show it because it's only going to copy the thing and not my mouse really. Can you guys see my cursor? Probably not, huh? I guess I should be showing my desktop instead of my my application. But I'm going to choose the path tool, which are the ones just below the arrows on the left here. And I'm going to choose, they call it the pen tool, but it's a path. It's a vector path. And you can do the curvature one or the regular one. And I'm just going to go in, make a new layer, and I'm just going to go in and mark out my main key points. So I'm just going to go around. And if you wanted to just do half and then have a fold line, that would work too. But I'm just going around and I'm just mapping out all the kind of key points. Then I'm going to add the curves later on. I kind of trace over it. I have a drawing tablet now too, but I always just did this with my trackpad until recently, so I'm just going to keep doing that for right now. Plus it's less things to figure out how to work. I'm going to switch this over to lines because it's too hard to see. And so now I've got my overall kind of roughed out image. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to get rid of that, make this thicker, go to my stroke so I can see it better. I'm going to go up to a 2 or a 3, and I'm going to turn that into the curvature tool instead of the regular one. So like now I've got this one I've got here, and I can go and I can select curvature or delete anchor or anchor point tool, and anchor point tool will just modify an anchor point. So now I'm making that into the curve. and then you just, you know, keep it fairly close. It doesn't have to be exact, but you can go in and you can pretty much fine tune any of those curves. If you hold down shift, it'll make it the same on both sides. Sometimes you can get a better thing with your pattern because your cut out piece of paper was just you working it out, roughly. It wasn't real precise, and now you're going in and you're digitally doing it, so it's actually going to be a little better. Can make it more symmetrical, etc. So now I've got this nice curve at the side. I can go and even that one out too. Let me make this stroke a little bigger so it's easier to see. And so we've got this like drawn trace outline around the image, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to cut and just have the 1/2 so that it's going to be symmetrical. So you can use your guide tool and you can put a guide at the middle. So I'm going to say this point here is going to be my middle, or approximately my middle. You can do it exactly based on your size if you want to do the math on where your points are, but I think that that's the middle. Right about there. And now I've got a guide at the middle, and I can do a guide at the bottom too, so that things snap to my guide. Now everything's going to be guaranteed to be straight. And there's an eraser or scissors tool, and I'm going to cut my path right on that guide at both the top and the bottom. And now I've got two separate pieces, and I can delete the 1/2, and then I can take the other half and copy it and paste it in front and transform it and reflect it. And then I can drag it over to the other side, or you could just at that point stop and put your dotted dashed line to show your fold line instead. Clear my guides now. So now I can hide my background. So now I've got my sort of roughed out image that I've got for my bodice. And at this point you could put your seam allowance if you have any. For me, I don't. It's included in this. If you were going to do, your cut line and then your sewing lines, you could add in your sewing lines. I would use the same technique basically. And then you could also go in and put in your scale to make sure that it stays scaled for people. So if they're going to be printing it up, you want to make sure that you've got your 1-inch square or your 2-centimeter square or whatever you want to do, or 1 centimeter. And you can make sure that it's exactly the size you want it to be. So there's my little scale square. It's exactly to scale. If you're going to be doing it, this one here is already only less than 10 inches, so I can put half of this onto a single page. But if it was going to be a multi-page pattern, you could cut it up and then save them each as separate pieces, or you could bring it into Photoshop and cut it up. For me, I've kind of done a combination of those two things. Sort of change the angle of that right there. You can put any text over it that you want. You could, write fold line. You could write, do that. It's really weird talking while I'm drawing. I'm not used to it. So if you want to take your line tool, draw your little line here, and then choose whatever style of line you want. I'm going to do a dashed line so that you can see it's your fold line. You can change it to be narrower. You can change it to be gray instead of black. So there's your fold line now. You can go back to your general document stuff. Change your artboard again. Make it smaller. So that it ends up being just exactly one page. And that'll make it super easy. Change your stroke width. Write any guides that you want. So for this one, this is my size 3 to 4 front dress bodice piece, I believe, or 3-4, yeah. Take that and center it. Put it at the top right here. You can do your little fold line guide and make that the same color as the fold line. I think actually that color, yeah. And smaller, I think. And then rotate that and put it along the fold line. I could do a square for the both centimeters and inches. Rotate that. Make it 2. Drag it inside. Zoom in. Smaller. 1 inch. And then 1 centimeter. Let's save that. I mean, that's pretty simple, right? Like, any questions with that? It's just tracing. So for this is my size 3 to 4 dress bodice piece. It's for my circle skirt, twirly skirt. I had the top, and then I had a straight little waist section, and then I had a circle skirt, which I also have photos of. I could put pockets into them or not have pockets into them. I did trim for the neck or a sleeve or or at a tank style. It was a super basic pattern. I just drafted it based on things that fit my daughter, taking a dress that she already had, tracing it, making changes to what she did and didn't like, and then putting it onto a piece of brown paper. So that's when you get this, right? And then at that point, you just go in and digitize it just by tracing it. So now I've got my traced digital template, which anybody could print, anybody could sew from. I used serger, so I didn't even have a seam allowance. If you were doing something that needed to be turned, you could have a seam allowance drawn in the same way. It's just tracing. I like using the path tool, but if you don't have Illustrator and you only have a raster graphics tool like Photoshop, you could just trace it with a pencil or a paintbrush tool. It's really not super difficult. It takes some getting familiar with whatever application that you're using, but it's not a difficult thing to do. There's probably actual drafting apps out there that are more liked by people or whatnot, but I haven't had any trouble with this method, and it's pretty cut and dry, pretty straightforward. So like for the pocket, since it's also a small thing, basically do the same thing, right? We're just going to take it, we're just going to stretch it until it lines up with our grid, till the squares are approximately the same size. This one's a little rotated, but it's not super super different. I just stretch it till it's about the right size. Till an inch lines up with an inch. And it doesn't have to be precise, you know, with clothes it can be within a certain, you know, area of, like, something being a 1/4 inch off isn't going to change its size. So, and it looks like that lines up. Top. Yep. Let's rotate that a little bit. And line it up. You can use your skew tool if it's not working out exact. But I think that's pretty close. So now we've got our little pocket here, and we're gonna lock that layer so we're not messing with it. We're gonna add another layer. We're gonna take our pen tool, and we're just gonna trace around it. I'm gonna do shift to get this straight line right here. Go to my key points. Get some nice even curves. Switch it to be a line rather than an outline. And change my size so it's easy to see. You can work in other colors too if you want. And then I'm going to go to my anchor point tool, and I'm going to change my anchor points that are on the curves to being on the curves. Until it lines up. And just kind of move things around until they line up. And there's my nice little traced outline. It's that quick, that easy. Just trace something, take a photo from above on your mat or with a ruler as a guide. And you've got your little outline. You can label it, you can put your guides. Got my centimeter, got my inch. Anybody have any questions? Put any directions that you need on it. And this is the kind for like the side template where you just add the pocket into the seam on the sides of the dress or on the sides of whatever. There's obviously different styles of pockets, so maybe I should write that here. Like, what would you call that side? Like hip side seam pocket, I guess. And I'll say cut 4. Anyway, I think that's pretty direct. Now you've got your little printable template. Fits on your regular size paper. This is a regular size piece of paper for these two. For larger things, you would just use the cutting tool or cut it up in a drawing app. It doesn't change really anything with the way you make it. Let's save that one. I've got a bigger one that I can do that I've got prepared. I've got a photo of the circle-ish skirt, I call it, because it's not a full circle skirt. I had these cuts that were only like 18 inches tall of fabric, and I was finding a dress style that I used to, that I could use with these little tiny pieces of fabric that I had. And so I went and I sort of traced out pieces of dresses that could fit, and I made these little section piece dresses where like no one piece was bigger than a certain size. Basically a scrap dress. And so I have all these little small bodice pieces, small pockets, small sleeves, and for the skirt, this was like the style of skirt that I could fit like the most of my small cuts of fabric to make big long dresses. And this one was the circle-ish style, but I also used to do the sort of kerchief square skirt styles, and those were great because, well, here I've got one for the size 12 open. Let me see if I actually I don't know if I have it made already. I had a size 12 one that I could make on nothing more than 18 inches of fabric, but by having a really wide bottom seam, I had like a 6-inch or 6 or 7 inch wide strip rectangle that I could then sew to the bottom of the curved part of the dress, and then it would be the length would be right, but I didn't use any large pieces of fabric. But it was still like a color block dress or a color and then a pattern, and it worked really well. So we're gonna do the same thing with this one. We're gonna show the grid. I have my grid set up ahead of time, and we're gonna show the rulers, and then we're gonna put this so that it lines up with those 1-inch sizes. So get that about right. It's just about right there. So it lines up. Looks like right about there. So then you've got your little drawn out piece. You can change your document size to fit your artboard size to fit it. Lock that layer, add a new layer, change my setup, change my artboard, stretch it so that it fits the whole thing. And then just do your same thing. You take your pen tool, trace your thing that you've already got drawn on your, this was, for me, it was grocery bags. I always used grocery bags. Shift for my fold line so that it's a straight line. We want even curves, so we're just going to do even curves on this one. And then connect your points together. Change my stroke size so it's easier to see. And use my anchor point tool to change the type of anchor that I have. So for this one is going to be a sharp curve and one is going to be straight. So I'm going to undo one and do the other. I'm going to push in one and let the other collapse. So now they're both the right type of curves. So take that one, get rid of that one, take that one, get rid of that one. And now I can go in with my point manipulator, I don't know what the real name of it is, and just kind of use that bar to make it line up with my curve. And you can get a better curve, obviously, with these tools than you could have gotten with just, tracing a dress or just freehanding it. It gives you a much more precise curve. Make it even length to the other one, make it both line up. Right there is going to be pretty perfect. Then we do the same thing on the top. It's a nice, perfect little curve there. And then we can change, we can cut this one out and make it a fold line instead. Zoom in a little bit. Cut. Cut. And so now I've got this other line here. I should be able to go with my stroke, turn it into a dashed line, change the color if I want. So now I've got a folded line. And now I can go and get rid of that one entirely. And I can put my directions. So fold line, change my size, rotate, and then you can say, you know, cut to. Put that wherever we're going to put it. Put it inside. You're going to have to cut this one up, or at least, or put like a directions. You could have it shrunk down and then give like the inch amounts instead of like actually using it the way it is. Yeah, gosh, you could do the same if you wanted to make it a true circle skirt. You could use the circle tool and draw a circle, and then, you know, quarter it out and have a much more precise thing. For me, I had the back a little longer than the front on this skirt so that it covered their butts, and so this was actually the back side. It dips a little lower, and then the front side, you'd make sure that this line here lines up with this line here. I don't know if it's clear or not, but that's the way that I do my templates. Same thing with the diapers. I stretched out diapers that my kids fit generally, widened them at some curves, narrowed them at others, added in whatever pictures, you know, concentric circles for snaps, things like that. And then for, you know, clothing, it's the same kind of thing. Have a piece of thing that fits you well, take it, modify it. If you wanted to cut it into, you know, if you were doing like a color block thing, you want to bisect the picture, you know, use the cut tool. You can cut it up and then add your seam allowance on both pieces and then fit them back together so that you end up with patterns on things. So like if you have a dress like or a shirt, my daughter has this pajama shirt where the front is a panel that was too small to be a full shirt panel, and so I made like an angle and like a curve. And for that kind of thing, you basically just take your general image and you cut it up and then add just enough on both sides to quilt it, to, you know, to have a seam allowance between the two. And it's pretty straightforward. So if you were going to be making your own pattern, you've got something that you've got traced out, you've got, you know, a paper bag, you know, something to trace it out with, and you want to distribute it, you want to sell it, you want to, you know, just give it to your friends, you want to post it up for free, whatever you want to do. You can just trace it in some sort of a drawing app after taking a photo. This is my cell phone that I used for these photos, and then I just texted it to myself or emailed it to myself and then opened it on my computer because I don't have the direct, you know, link between the two. And then I just opened it up within the file, set my grid size, turned on my rulers, and traced it. And that's, you know, all you need to do. It's basically the same thing as scanning or photocopying. It's just puts it directly into a digital file. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Got your little pocket, got your little dress front. I think it's pretty cut and dry. If there's anything anybody else wants to see me do in Illustrator or in Photoshop, hopefully things are kind of working. I can switch to another scene so we can talk. You can see my laptop. I set up some stuff ahead of time. So there's there's me sitting at my usual desk, except for I brought my laptop down onto the sewing table rather than up on the little, shelving unit that I have in front of me here. And I have my camera up there still, but not my, not my laptop's camera. I just have a laptop. I don't have a desktop or anything in here. I just have it plugged in to everything. It's pretty cut and dry. I'd love to do things by request. Like if you have a favorite dress that, works for you and you want to get a digital pattern made of it, take a photo of it laid out with some rulers or with the cutting mat and we can make a pattern together for it. We can do it together. It'd be fun. Come to me. I've got a Discord now. I've got it linked from my YouTube channel and also from my blog. If you want to go into my Discord, you can post up any ideas you have for patterns or for tutorials or for art or anything that you need to troubleshoot. If you have anything that you're working on yourself and you want to digitize it or you want to do a logo or I don't know, gosh, custom fabric prints, we can do all sorts of things. I am not just a seamstress, right, or a sewist. I can do lots of different artsy things, and the way I do them might not be the formal education way of doing it because I'm pretty much self-taught, but I think we can figure things out. I like figuring things out. I like helping, and I think it would be really, really fun to have sort of a community-sourced pattern bank. Like anything that I make is obviously going to be free. I'd put it up on my blog for people to download. So if you have a skirt idea or a shirt or a dress or pajamas, any size, if you are not size 4 through 8 in underpants and want a period panties pattern, I will do that. You take a photo of yours over some, over a measurement grid and you pair of underwear that fits you great and we will make it work for you. That's how I do those. That's how I do pretty much everything. It's just taking a photo over a cutting mat or over yardsticks or something to give an idea of scale. And as long as you're directly overhead and it's not too warped, then even cell phones are enough to get that. And we could do anything. So yeah, if you have some cosplay costume that you want and you've got a general dress that you like the cut of and you've got a photo of the thing that you want to turn it into, we can make you a cosplay dress pattern, custom. I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do custom patterns. I want to do costumes. I want to do headpieces. Whatever you want to do. Let's do it together. I think that'd be great. So I hope that was useful for you guys. And if we do come up with something that we want to design together as a community, I think it would be really, really fun. We could do it on stream. We could do it as a tutorial. We could do it privately through the Discord. Yeah, reach out. I want to see what we can come up with. Happy sewing.